Hello and welcome back to Understanding the Meta. And welcome to my new office. Look how cool this place is. My guild leaders made it for me. Thanks very much for that. But we're going to dive straight in here. And we're going to be looking at the Healing Druid. This is something I got to grips with recently, and I wanted to share that process with you. Now, it's a pretty complex class, but it's more about the variations and the options you have than pure like rotations. And in fact, there is no hard rotation. So it's going to be a little bit different from our regular guides, but let's just dive straight in. So maybe you're familiar with Druid, maybe you're not, but I'll go over this anyway. The Druid is about healing and about providing boons for your party in the form of might and the form of fury. So we're going to be focusing heavily on heals and boon duration. So what have we got here? Well, we have Harrier's Gear. What is the Harrier's Gear? Because it's the best combination of healing power and concentration. And you can see there we also have the Superior Rune of the Monk. So the gear here is pretty simple. You've got Harriers just all the way. Everything is Harriers. We want to maximize our boon duration, and because I'm sat in the chair right now, you can't see, but this is around 95% when, let's just get out of the chair, just so you can see that. Yeah, see the boon duration there is 95%, and that really helps with the might uptime, and of course we're using a staff, because it's a high heal weapon, with a sigil of transference, really important to keep that outgoing healing effectiveness by increased by 10%. And a superior sigil of water, so that, just randomly every 5 seconds will cause a little splash of heal around your target. And then we have the axe and the warhorn, on the offhand. We've still got transference, and we've still got the sigil of water, because even if we switch, we're gonna still want to be pumping out the heals as much as possible. So the gear is fairly simple. It's when you get into the intricacies of, how you play the profession that it gets a little bit tougher. So for followers of the series, you'll realize that normally I like to split things up into damage modifiers, passive and active, and then utility traits. Now for the Druid, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because we're not really looking at the traits and thinking, how can we get the max damage out of it? We're actually looking at the traits and thinking, how can we get the most utility out of it? So we have to alter our approach slightly. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to look at passive utilities, we're going to look at active utilities, and we're going to look at unimportant traits. Now, I say unimportant in quote marks because they're not completely pointless, and a good Druid will revisit these later and try and maximize them. But for now, we're going to focus on what really helps you heal and provide boons for your party. So let's jump straight into Skirmishing. So we're going to be looking at some variations a little bit later on, but for now we're just looking at the base setup. And in Skirmishing, we have one passive utility trait, and that is Spotter. You increase the precision of nearby allies, and 100 precision to your entire team almost makes the trait line worth bringing by itself. But we have another useful trait, and that's an active utility trait. And it's this one here, Quick Draw. When swapping weapons, the next range of weapon skill you use will recharge faster. So what this doesn't advertise is this actually works when you go into Celestial Avatar. Celestial Avatar counts as a weapon swap, and it will allow you to quick draw a skill in Celestial Avatar. A little bit later on when we're looking at that, that's going to become important. So those are the active and passive utility traits of Skirmishing, and then the rest are the sort of unimportant traits I mentioned. And we have Tailwind, gain swiftness when swapping weapons in combat. Not going to be actively thinking about that. Sharpened Edges, you and your pet have increased bleeding on critical hits, so damage. Not really, there's not a good option here. Gain Furious Grip, gain Fury when swapping weapons in combat, because you want to be providing Fury to the rest of your party. This only does it to yourself. It's an unimportant trait. And then we have Hunter's Tactics. You have an increased chance to critically strike while attacking from behind or the side. So this would be very important if you're on a damage focus build. But as such, because we're not, it's kind of unimportant. So moving straight on to nature magic. So in nature magic, we have one active utility skill, and that's Windborne Notes. Warhorn skills gain reduced recharge, and Call of the Wild now grants regeneration. So Call of the Wild is your number 5 skill there. You can see that 11 seconds regen. It's a very nice bonus to have on that number 5 on the Warhorn. And then we have 3 passive utility traits. We have Instinctive Reaction, gain quickness when your health drops below the threshold. You and your pet gain healing power based on power. So it's the healing power buff based on a percentage of your power, which is a nice passive bonus. The quickness when your health drops, that won't proc that often because you'll be healing a lot of the time, which passively heals you too. So it's not going to be something you look to get. And then we have another couple of passive bonuses here. We have Lingering Magic. You and your pet gain increased concentration. So extra boon duration. Very nice for putting out Might and Fury. And then Allied Summon Spirits skills have increased health and grant boons to their allies. So this is, you'll be using a lot of spirits a lot of the time as a heal druid. And you're not going to actively do this. This is a passive utility to create these sort of extra boons as you do it. And then we have some unimportant traits. We have Rejuvenation, gain regeneration when you receive damage while your health is below the threshold. Well, getting regeneration from yourself, i.e. you're not there to heal yourself, you're there to heal other people, so not particularly useful. Then Fortifying Bond, when you gain a boon, it is shared with your pet. You're not going to be focusing too heavily on what your pet's doing. It's more there for utility, other than boons and stuff like that. So it's not particularly useful there at all. So that's nature magic. And lastly, for druid, we have all of the major traits being active utility traits. So cultivated synergy, using your heal skill heals allies around you and your pet. So in excess of like what the actual heal does itself, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you have the ability to heal your allies with your heal skill. And then we have Verdant Etching. Glyphs gain reduced recharge and cast Lesser Seed of Life. So Lesser Seed of Life is a heal, but also it's important because of another trait, which we'll get into immediately, but just focus on this for the time being. Glyphs gain reduced recharge, so you're using a lot of glyphs most of the time, and they create lesser seeds of life. So it's an active process to use your glyphs to spawn those seeds of life for healing for your party. So even, Glyph of Unity, tether yourself to nearby foes. Whenever you take damage, they take damage. You use it for healing because it's not, an active heal skill, but it is a glyph. And then we have Grace of the Land. And Grace of the Land, probably the most active of all utility skills, grants increased damage to allies within radius of your Celestial Avatar abilities. So, gives them Might, the 2 stacks of Might, every time a Celestial Avatar ability hits one of your party. And this is the main way, it's the main way in which a druid provides might to your party. And as I mentioned before, Verdant Etching glyphs, that will become relevant here. So, cast Lesser Seed of Life. So if I just go into Celestial Avatar quickly, you'll see Seed of Life is a Celestial Avatar skill. So every glyph will also proc Seed of Life, which procs Grace of the Land. So glyphs will also increase your might. If you see when it runs out, I get the might from Grace of the Land. So that's how those two things connect. And then we have passive utility skills. And that's Live Vicariously. When you heal an ally, you are also healed. Healing yourself is just a nice little bit of passive utility. And then increase outgoing healing whenever you heal another ally. You're going to be frantically healing another ally. There's no way you can sort of actively control this process. So it's just a nice little passive bonus to your outgoing healing. And then we have an unimportant trait here, Celestial Being. I call it unimportant. You don't need to think about it, but basically it's the trait that just gives you access to all of the druid stuff, including a Celestial Avatar. And as always, we're going to draw some salient points from the trait screen in general. And we're going to start with the most important point of all, and that is using Grace of the Land effectively. So, generating might is the second most important, or maybe even most important function of a druid in a party. And you'll be wanting to put out large amounts of this using your celestial avatar as frequently as possible, and your glyphs also to generate seeds of life, which also rock Grace of the Land. So, getting nice might stacks with Grace of the Land. Then, secondly, we have Quick Draw. Now, this was important when we were talking about Soul Beast as well, but this time we're going to be focusing on using Quick Draw to improve our healing, and that's done because it procs, as I mentioned, when you go into Celestial Avatar. So when we're talking about the Celestial Avatar skills a little bit later on, we mention how to maximize the use of Quick Draw. So using Quick Draw smartly. And then thirdly, we have the Verdant Etching, which is using your glyphs as much as possible to generate Seeds of Life so that we can generate Grace of the Land. So active use of our glyphs. And then finally, we have Windborne Notes. Warhorn skills gain reduced recharge, and Call of the Wild now grants regeneration. So just use Call of the Wild. You can see we have a nice long regeneration, which is very useful for keeping up the astral force, and that's this meter here. Generates Celestial Avatar as much as possible. And you notice a lot of this, it's just all about this F5 skill. It's all about Celestial Avatar, getting as much of that out as possible so you can generate might, so you can heal your party, and generally fulfill your purpose, your Christmas purpose. And just before we leave this fabulously decorated office, just going to briefly talk through the skills. We're not going to focus too heavily on it now because we'll be revisiting this later on when we're talking about variations and stuff like that. But the heal, we have the Glyph of Regeneration. So apply significant healing to yourself and your pet while healing allies for a minor amount. And this turns to basically reverses so that your allied healing is much higher and your self-healing is much lower when you're in Celestial Avatar. Glyph of Empowerment, increase outgoing damage of nearby allies. You're going to want to be spamming this as much as possible. Giving Glyph of Empowerment to your team, very useful power bosses. But also, as I mentioned, it generates the Seed of Life and Might at the same time. In Celestial Avatar, you might want to use it, but just it's like an absolute edge case because it increases your healing for a small amount of time, which is useful in very clutch cases where you just don't have enough healing for the party. And then we have spirits here. We have the Frost Spirit, which increases the passive damage of your group by 5%. And pulses might there, you can see. And then we have the Sun Spirit, which summons a spirit which grants allies a chance to inflict burning. So we're using this to increase direct damage and this to increase condition damage. And as I said, there'll be more options later on. But for the staff skills, we have Solar Beam. So you're going to be firing this thing off. Like, I can't show you without a target, unfortunately. But it basically damages everything between you and your target. So what you want to do normally is just step just like a little bit back from the group. Not too much so that you're too far away. Still very, very close, but so that this beam goes through your entire party while they're attacking your target. And then Astral Wisp, you'll also want to be hitting on cooldown. Sends out a wisp, and then that just sort of rotates around your party. Sorry, rotates around the boss and heals people it passes through. And then we have Ancestral Grace. Become a wisp of natural energy, traversing to the target location. When you reach the target, heal nearby allies and grant protection to your pet. So we don't really care about pet protection. Like, we less than care about pet protection. We'd rather it just wasn't. I'm just kidding. But so it's a movement skill which is very helpful sometimes. When you're trapped in bad situations. But more importantly, it's a little burst heal when you arrive. So it's a nice way to do some burst healing for your party. And then this is something that a lot of people miss. Send fourth vines that immobilize enemies. So most people think, oh, why would I do that? You know, immobilize, not very useful, particularly in raids. You know, in CC bars, a little bit of immobilize doesn't really hurt. But more importantly, it cleanses conditions. So this is another condition cleanser, which you might not be aware of if you didn't pay too much attention. So worth bearing in mind. And it's just a line skill shot. You can see that any allies caught in that will have their conditions cleansed from them. And then we have Sublime Conversion. Summon an energy barrier that causes enemy projectiles to heal upon impact. So it creates this wall. Works like all the other projectile walls in the game, but when projectiles go through it, they become heal, which is a nice little way of turning damage into heal. You'll also notice that it actually creates a combo field. So you see there, there's a combo field of water. And why is that important? Well, if you blast a water field, it creates healing. So you can smartly use this if you don't have projectiles to worry about and you need to actively use it. Then you can use it sort of to actually increase your passive healing. And a combination I like to use is also with Call of the Wild, another blast finisher. So it would be 5 into 3, and then you can see there we procced area healing twice, which is a nice little combination to really improve the little bit of burst healing on your party as you're swapping weapons. And yeah, it's very useful for that. So I'll talk about Celestial Avatar later on. I'd say that's pretty much it for the initial skill description. So normally I would go through a professional rotation video of what the absolute possible optimal thing to do would be. Unfortunately with Druid, that's not really the case. We can't really do that as videos about how to sort of maximize your healing, stuff like that. It's all kind of situational, and there's a lot of different schools of thought on it as well. I'm just going to share you my thoughts on it and what I see a lot of pros do in, sort of their raid groups and stuff like that. And it concerns mostly about how you use Celestial Avatar, and that's why I've come to the Kitty Cave, and I've got this pulsing damage field, so you can see, so I can demonstrate the healing of that. There's going to be a lot of cutting in this section of the video because I have to regenerate my Celestial Avatar and stuff. I want to apologize for that in advance, but firstly, let's actually talk about the Celestial Avatar skills. So in Celestial Avatar, the first skill, Cosmic Ray, is a nice, just like on-the-spot heal. Now you can spam this and get some decent healing out. Most of the time I don't though, like it's not how it goes. Most of the time I use the other skills, but that's Cosmic Ray. Then we have the number 2 skill, which is Seed of Life, and as I mentioned, the lesser Seed of Life is when you use the Glyphs. But it just creates a nice little seed, which does like a fair amount of healing. It's often the last skill I press before I leave Celestial Avatar. The next skill is Lunar Impact, and this provides a nice AoE burst heal. You can see it does a lot big damage. It's what you want to do, what you want to quick draw if you're looking to really burst the healing of your group. The next skill is Rejuvenating Tides, and as you see, this pulses a number of times. So if I cast this, you can see I go up a little bit. What this means is it actually creates a large amount of might using the Grace of the Lands trait. So this, and quick drawing Rejuvenating Tides in particular, is a way to get up large amounts of might for your party. And then lastly, the number 5 skill, Natural Convergence. Channel your celestial powers, pulsing, cripple, and slow. Basically, just a clutch CC skill that you can use, but it's got no healing benefit. Also worth mentioning that Lunar Impact just disappeared there, but worth mentioning that Lunar Impact has a daze on it as well. So the daze from Lunar Impact can be used on a CC bar, and then secondarily, if you really need CC, you can use the number 5 skill in Celestial Avatar as well. I'm going to focus on 3 combinations of skills when you get into Celestial Avatar mode. And the first one is just going to be the one you use most of the time to just keep the might ticking over, keep the healing ticking over, and get Celestial Avatar up as much as possible. And it's a very simple combination. Go into Celestial Avatar, you press number 4, Rejuvenating Tides, you press number 3, Lunar Impact, and then you press number 2, Seeds of Life, and then you leave Celestial Avatar immediately. And what this does is it leaves you with a little bit of Astral Force left, to the point that the regeneration time will be almost bang on of the cooldown time of Celestial Avatar itself. So that really helps you continually go into Celestial Avatar on repeat. And also, because you're not worrying too much about quick drawing, one thing I like to do before using that particular combination is switch to the Warhorn, your Axe Warhorn set, and use Call of the Wild to keep regen ticking over while you're doing all that as well. And then when it comes out of Celestial Avatar, Call of the Wild in general will probably be sort of almost back off of cooldown, and then you can switch back into the staff and start your regular healing with your glyphs and everything again. So the second combination I want to talk about is going into Celestial Avatar and then using Lunar Impact first. So you're quick drawing Lunar Impact. So you want to make sure you don't swap weapons before you go into Celestial Avatar for this particular combination. Use Lunar Impact, number 3, then number 4, Rejuvenating Tides, then number 2, Seeds of Life, and then back to Lunar Impact, number 3. So when's this combo good for? Well, it's good when you need to burst heal very strongly. And it's also very good when you need to heal during a CC bar, because you'll be able to use Lunar Impact, which has a daze on it, twice during any given CC bar. So it's a nice burst heal combo, and it's good for CC. And you'll end up with a little bit less Astral Force when you end, but it's nice for those two circumstances. So the last combination I want to talk about is quick drawing Rejuvenating Tides, the number 4 skill in the Celestial Avatar. So the main aim here is to use number 4, number 3, Lunar Impact, then number 2, Seeds of Life, and then you can fit in another Rejuvenating Tides. Now this creates a large amount of healing, and more importantly, it creates a burst of might generation. So it's very good for those burn phases of bosses, where you need to create a large amount of might up front. This does about 24 stacks right off the bat, which is the highest combination of Celestial Avatar might generation. So you want to use it at the beginning of a fight, for example, or, as I said before, a burn phase. It does leave you with less Celestial Avatar than the other two combinations. You need to be careful when you use it, or you're going to be able to regenerate more in the meantime. First thing we're going to talk about with regards to sort of options is the pets. So what do I have selected now? I have the Pink Moa and the Rock Gazelle selected now. So why have I got those pets selected? Well, they are CC pets. So the Pink Moa has Dazing Screech. You can also use a Black Moa if you have access to that from Guild Wars 1. It's actually better than the Pink Moa. Create a cone of sound, dazing foes. So it's a nice dazing strike. And then the what do you call this? The Rock Gazelle has head toss. Toss your foe into the air. So it's a launch. It's a nice little CC skill. So those are two nice CC pets. But then you might be thinking, well, what if I have to be the one that provides fury for our group? And you might want to bring a tiger. You need to think about the group composition a bit when you're doing this. So the tiger has a skill that by itself, as you can see there, it's got 10-second cooldown and it's 11 seconds of fury. So by itself, you can generate fury for your group permanently. So that's worth thinking about. And you can see it's about to come off cooldown, and there it is again. Bang. And there might be other forms of fury in your party, but generally speaking, you can support the fury for your party that way. If you are experiencing low might numbers, then you might even want to think about a Jungle Stalker. Jungle Stalker will give extra might on its F2 ability. Its cooldown is much higher, but it can be a nice little gap filler for that. Another way you can generate fury, I've mentioned Call of the Wild before. There's a huge time of fury on this skill. So you got 19.5 seconds. I like to use that at the start of every fight. It generates a little bit of might and a bit of fury for your group before going into Celestial Avatar and getting that rolling. So those are two options for Fury. Another option for Fury is changing a trait here. So this thing, Windborne Notes, I kind of like to have it on regen a lot of the time. Nice way to build up your Astral Force when you're in Celestial Avatar, and also just passively when you're out of it. But if you need to be the generator of Fury for your party, another option you might want to go for is Spirited Arrival. What does that do? Well, it grants boons to nearby allies when swapping pets. So you swap pets every now and again. Let's say you're between, you know, the you have your CC pets, right? It doesn't really matter which one is selected when you first hit a CC bar. So you just swap pets the cooldown of it's about 10 seconds, and you gain a fair amount of fury with that. It also passively gives vigor, which is very useful for your group. You know, being able to dodge that a little bit more could save them. So, you know, generally speaking, that's a very nice trait to run as well. And you can decide what you feel is good, and, you know, whether your group actually needs fury or not, about which one of these to pick. Other options include skills. So currently we have a bunch of glyphs equipped, but in particular the heal skill. This is a nice skill for just healing, you know. Generically, if you want to heal quite a lot, then you can use the Glyph of Rejuvenation. But you might want to swap to Healing Spring. So what does Healing Spring do? Well, it puts down a field which, as well as granting regeneration, also removes conditions from allies. And it's a sort of passive thing that just keeps triggering again and again. So it's like it has a duration. You can see there. Triggers, like just it's kind of pulses condition removal. That's very good for fights like Slothazor and stuff when there's lots of conditions and you need to, you know, remove them fairly quickly and they're being reapplied or whatever. You can just remove them using the Healing Spring. Something you might want to bear in mind when you're using Healing Spring is using Trapper's Expertise. So here's another sort of option you can change from this one. Sharpened Edges. You and your pets have a chance to cause bleeding. So I classified this as an unimportant trait. It really is for this build. So you could switch to Trapper's Expertise. Increase the duration of boons and conditions applied by traps. So also reduce recharge. So you can use this skill more often. And you can see like the cooldown is lower, and it also gives you a longer duration on the regen from that skill. So you can see it goes from 5 3/4 seconds to 9 3/4 seconds. So it's a considerable length of regen, which is a big way you can regenerate your astral force. And speaking of regeneration, one thing you can also do is take the water spirit in the heal slot. So this by itself will give you permanent regeneration for your group. You can see here it will get re-put on me before it runs out. And that's permanent. That will last as long as the spirit lasts. And you don't want to be using the active part of this. You want to leave it on the passive part. As you can see there, it has a chance to do, well, 100% chance now. It used to be a chance. But every 6 seconds, people who are attacking will gain 863 heal from it as well. So this is probably like the most healy option of all the heals. However, you lose the might generation from Seed of Life on the Glyph, and you lose the condition removal from Healing Spring. So it's all a toss-up about what the situation you're in. And also, Stone Spirit is an option instead of Glyph of Empowerment. Glyph of Empowerment increases the damage, so you can see this is a very defensive swap out. We're swapping in Stone Spirit to get the pulsing protection. And this is for areas where you really struggle to keep your team alive and get that protection. Sort of, it's about 2/3 uptime. See there. Another option you might want to examine is swapping out the Glyph of Unity for the Spirit of Nature. And what this would do is it gives you access to a spirit that revives allies. This is often referred to as the meme spirit, as you take it and you use it when your entire squad has downed and therefore messed up. So just having it on your bar is a kind of admission that potential failure is on the board, but it's also very useful to save your squad from possibly the inevitable. Let's leave it at that. So I could spend a while talking about the various options there are and making a condition-focused druid and stuff like that, but I feel like I've covered the core of the meta build for heal druid, and I don't want to make things overly complex at this stage. You know, maybe there'll be another video down the line focusing on a condition healing druid, you know, that kind of thing. Who knows? But let's just quickly mention the consumables. So what do we have here? We have Bountiful Maintenance Oil. The recipe for such will be up on the screen now. And yeah, unfortunately, you can't buy them from the TP. You have to create these. But they are considerably useful for increasing your outgoing healing damage. Yeah, outgoing healing in general, which is very important, obviously, for the full healed druid. And speaking of, we also have delicious rice balls. Luckily, you can buy these from the trading post, and those have plus 10% flat healing effectiveness on outgoing healing. So very useful food to also run while you're playing this profession. But that's about it, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. Unfortunately, there isn't, you know, like a full rotation to follow this time. But hopefully you have a better understanding of the meta and how to sort of play the druid in clutch situations. And all that's left to say is thanks for watching and tell a friend. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see.